Welcome everyone back to Spoiler Warning, featuring myself, Tom Colohue. We are, of course, talking wrestling as ever we do, and as ever there is a lot of wrestling to talk about. For some reason, it doesn't end. It just keeps going. And, you know, that means someone like me, who is a massive nerd, we get to watch a lot of wrestling, and a lot of wrestling there is to be watched. Our headlines today will largely be built around Seth Rollins. That is going to be our top story, particularly updates on his injury, what plans were, and what plans now are, because there's been a pretty serious pivot away from what the original intentions were. So we're going to dive into that. We're also going to talk about the War Games plan changing, why Six and MFT is apparently back in contention. We're going to be talking about the situation with Andrade and AEW, and the fact that his lawyer is partly funded by Ric Flair, which I just find very interesting. We're going to be talking about what Dave Meltzer is reporting. AJ Styles isn't just going to retire, a thing will happen. Always great. There's also talk of a thing happening with Chris Jericho that we will be talking about. Randy Orton has requested to work with someone currently wrestling in NXT and is instead being given a celebrity to wrestle with. Jay White is expected to return to AEW. The WWE continue a clear out in NXT. And the Hardys and the Iconics have a contract update in coming. We're also going to wrap up, of course, with a bit of conversation about the podcast recording that we had recently and the release of that on Monday. I'll love to hear your opinions on that, so stay tuned for once we get to that section, and we're going to talk about what I'm going to be discussing in this Monday's upcoming one. But before I get to that, before I catch up with a lot of news that's been dropped in the chat already, thank you Liam, let's talk Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins has apparently sustained a serious shoulder injury, but as it's Seth Rollins, I don't think we can really trust a single word he says. I am told that Seth has been wearing baggy clothing to hide a secure brace to keep his arm in place and to keep his shoulder in place. He specifically was protecting himself during the tsunami, and it's why he didn't take a sustained beating during the moment when Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed turned on him. The Vision were supposed to grow. They were supposed to go into War Games with Austin Theory. Austin Theory was recently cleared to wrestle, and in fact, he's waiting for a storyline as we speak. The storyline that was pitched to him, largely by Seth Rollins, was to rejoin his former mentor and to continue as they were. That is, of course, not what is happening now. The Vision weren't only supposed to grow, they were supposed to endure, with the actual betrayal coming after WrestleMania in a way that was supposed to echo Rollins turning on the Shield way back when. It would still have been Bron Breakker because, as I've mentioned a few times, Bron Breakker is the end game of the Vision. The plan was always to have Bron Breakker come out of Vision looking as strong as possible, and the plan was always for Bron Breakker to be the Batista of the Vision. Much like Seth Rollins is the Triple H of the Vision. The entire faction, as I've mentioned before, is based on evolution. There is now an ongoing debate between the powers that be. There are three specific voices here that all want different things and all have different degrees of power. VTP, not sure what's going on there. Everyone else seems to be hearing the audio, so you might just want to refresh. The three voices in contention are naturally Seth Rollins, who wants Bron Breakker to be the next World Heavyweight Champion. Triple H, who wants CM Punk to be the next World Heavyweight Champion. And apparently, Paul Heyman is making a case for Roman Reigns to be the next World Heavyweight Champion. As I mentioned a couple of months ago, the end game for this particular storyline would have been Seth Rollins at WrestleMania against Roman Reigns for the World Heavyweight Championship. It's now been confirmed that Roman Reigns would have been your next World Heavyweight Champion, leading into a feud between Roman Reigns and Jey Uso for the championship, and then leading forward to Roman Reigns versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. And just like that, the World Heavyweight Championship feels like the biggest belt in the world. Seth Rollins is unfortunately no longer expected to be at WrestleMania at all. He is expected to return to take on Bron Breakker and try and get that feud going again. But this is a very similar write-off to what happened with Cody Rhodes, when Seth Rollins briefly turned face to respect Cody after the Hell in a Cell match. And then they forgot about that when he eventually returned. Because why wouldn't you? Triple H, Seth Rollins are believed to have had some intense conversations and some intense disagreements as to what happens next. Seth Rollins will be losing the championship. The intention is to lose the championship to one of the men mentioned there, rather than vacate it. Seth Rollins believes that he can still wrestle. Triple H is not necessarily willing to give him the chance to do so. I've got plenty more to share on this, and there's plenty of comments in the chat. However, we have 62 people and only the 14 likes, so only a quarter of you have hit the like button. If you can, please remember to hit that thumbs up. It does make a massive difference. On shows where we have 50 likes, we have 100 viewers. So it does make a huge, huge difference. I'm going to scroll back up, see where we were with the chat, have a quick sip of my Coke, and then there's plenty that Liam's dropped in that I want to react to. So let's do that. Liam says, per Body Slam, thank you for sourcing. Sami Zayn is set to have a United States Championship Open Challenge match on tonight's episode of SmackDown. He is indeed. He's pushing to have one every single week. It's Triple H who wants a bit more rotation. Also says, sourcing via Wrestling Observer, John Cena winning the Intercontinental Championship from Dominic Mysterio at Survivor Series is reportedly being discussed. It is, however, depending on his final opponent, if that was going to happen, it would end up being someone like Finn Balor. There are no intentions, to my knowledge, at the moment for Gunther to win the Intercontinental Championship again, though he did, of course, offer it a lot of prestige. As regards Dominic Mysterio, he was on John Cena's list. He has been for a while. I've been mentioning this for a while. He wants a match. Cena wants the match because Cena knows what's hot and he wants to get on top of it. Prior to Seth Rollins' injury, Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed were planned to win the World Tag Team Championship. This is true. They were planning to essentially have a moment very similar to that pay-per-view where Evolution ended up leaving with all the gold. Randy Orton was the Intercontinental Champion, Batista and Ric Flair were the Tag Team Champions, and of course Triple H was the World Heavyweight Champion. They were planning something very similar. Also says, via Wrestling Observer again, there is reportedly talk backstage in WWE of lower advances for shows, record low ratings, and a belief that WrestlePalooza was a failure on ESPN. WrestlePalooza was a failure. Part of that, of course, was Brock Lesnar. But we are where we are with that one. People just didn't enjoy it. As regards low ratings, I mentioned this a few weeks ago. The WWE have been at pains to explain to Netflix that they're going through a lull because they always go through this lull. They have promised Netflix that they will get ratings up. However, they have not yet succeeded. Pardon me, Coke is doing me a disservice. They have not yet succeeded in bringing the numbers up in the way that they were intending. As regards Wesley, that is correct. Says there was reportedly no interest in Wesley being used on the main roster despite being ready for 5 years, and as a result Lee got cut from the company. That is absolutely correct. That is true for the vast majority of people who will be leaving NXT, and it's why people like Tony D'Angelo should be concerned. It's also one of the main reasons Dexter Lumis was let go when he was. As I mentioned, I feel years ago now, there were some serious concerns that Dexter Lumis would not translate well to the main roster. And in his previous incarnation, I would argue that this was proven correct. We will talk Chris Jericho shortly. Welcome Ray, welcome Declan. Liam also says AEW has reportedly instructed the commentary team to not mention Andrade. We will be discussing that shortly. Fiend says Wesley on the main roster could have been so good. I worry really that there's so little for someone like Carmelo Hayes to do. If you then start bringing more people up, I mean, you've got to give Santos Escobar a push now. Awkward. And then there's so many people like Liv Morgan who haven't returned yet. Liam says, prior to Seth Rollins' injury, I've discussed that one. Thank you very much, Liam, for dropping all of that news in. Right. Ooh, via Worked Wrestling. Call-ups are not necessarily expected soon. Call-ups expected around WrestleMania time. Thank you, Fiend. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Declan, for the chat rate. I appreciate you for that. It does really genuinely help. You can see that we've already gone from 14 to 30 likes, and we've shot up by another 7 viewers. So I appreciate you all for 8 viewers. So I appreciate you all for that. Little things like the like button, like the chat rate, really does help. Like saying hi to each other, it really does help. It is no longer about views. It never really has been on YouTube. It's all about how long you watch for and how engaged you are. Ooh. Liam says, what if Jacob Fatu was supposed to kayfabe get hurt after Drew McIntyre claymored him through the announce table, but someone at WWE accidentally had published on the news article instead of schedule for next week? Jacob Fatu has convinced me multiple times now that he's been seriously injured. Apparently it just isn't. It just isn't. Bailey says longer term the Fatu injury could be more important to storylines than whatever downtime Seth Rollins has in store. Debatable. Seth Rollins' plan was to elevate people like Austin Theory. It was to elevate people like Jimmy Uso. That was his plan. It was, of course, actively elevating people like LA Knight. So there's debate as regards that impact, though I do feel Jacob Fatu will no longer be involved in War Games if the injury is in fact correct, and that's going to do more damage for him. I've got something on that in a bit, Liam. Azza, I'm not sure. I saw that you asked that question in the comments in the podcast. I'm genuinely not sure. I don't have a direct line there. Tribal says hi. Welcome, Tribal. Eric says hi, Tom. How are you, buddy? Doing well, thank you, Eric. Welcome to the show. And Sean says hello, Tom. Welcome, Sean. Liam has the advertised card for SmackDown. Says Cody Rhodes addresses his loss. Randy Orton is featured. Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss versus Zakua for the tag team titles. And Drew McIntyre versus Jacob Fatu. So if he is seriously injured, we're going to find out very soon. Daniela, welcome. Says, question, do you ever see Axiom unmasking to be seen as a kid as he is under the mask? One day possibly, but I don't believe he's intending to at the moment. Interesting, Liam. I'd be interested to see how that goes. Declan, you've asked that question multiple times and I've answered it multiple times. Hello, Joe. How you doing, mate? Trackpedia says, would they really pull the fake injury thing twice in a row, though? I mean, if you've been watching Traitors, yes. Sean says, the idea of John Cena winning the IC title from Dominic and it being in play for the final match with Gunter has been discussed by Wrestling Observer. I've discussed that earlier. Eric says, Seth Rollins has become the boy who cried wolf. I mean, he is a wolf. Or at least an architect. Eric says, if Seth is forced to vacate, would you do CM Punk as champ or Braun? As I've mentioned, there is an ongoing debate between Seth Rollins and Triple H on just that topic. Hector says, afternoon, Tom, what's going on with this AI stuff being introduced within the WWE? So, I do have something on that. And in fact, I'm glad you asked that question. AI is something I've been learning a lot about recently. AI actually had a hand in the planning of the podcast on Monday. I just asked it if there's anything it felt I was missing and fed it my script, and there were a couple of suggestions that it made. I did have to correct it a few times, but we eventually got there. Essentially, they want to start using AI to hurry up the process. They want to make the whole thing faster and smoother, and they want to essentially make it so that in WWE, storylines and the individual scripts are written and planned out by AI. They actually tested AI in a storyline that was pretty big in the last 5 years. There was use of ChatGPT at its height, as well as some smaller, less known elements, which are, which the creative team are not willing to admit to. But ChatGPT was used in a pretty big storyline in the last 5 years. Can anyone suggest to me what storyline they think was partly written by ChatGPT? I want to take this opportunity to say thank you, Mashup Dad, for that very generous donation. I appreciate you and thank you very much for it. I'm going to stick the love heart in there. If everyone can also leave a thumbs up on Mashup Dad's donation, it is donations like that that keep the lights on here, and I very much appreciate you for it. Right. Fatu is reportedly dealing with a non-wrestling injury, which is expected to keep him out of action, and yet they've announced him to wrestle tonight, so we'll see how that goes. Joey, welcome, says, was Seth always planned to be kicked out this soon? No, not at all. After WrestleMania is when the original breakup was supposed to be. Eric says, if Seth is Triple H and Braun is Batista, then who's Bronson? Randy. Bronson is Brandy. Nope, wrong. Bronson is Randy. Thought I was doing one joke, but I ended up doing a very different one. No, Joey, it was the Coast to Coast. Nobody's quite sure why he did it. Nobody's quite sure why he did it, including him. Declan, you've also already asked and been answered about Becky. Becky and Seth are not the same person. They are not written by the same people. They are not bonded together so deeply that they can't have their own stories. Thank you, Trekkipedia. Appreciate that. If it is your first time here, be sure to hit subscribe. We've got good stuff coming. Rick, and we will be discussing Andrade shortly. Welcome, Ryan. Doing good. Thank you for joining us. Theme says, if it were up to me, I'd have Roman Reigns return and face off with CM Punk for the World Heavyweight Championship. One says, AEW probably regrets bringing back Andrade now. Yes and no. Yes, Joey, we will be talking about that shortly. Ray says, I was disappointed Indy Hartwell did not win the TNA Knockout Bound for Glory. Trekkipedia, thanks for that. As I've just mentioned, Tony D'Angelo. Eric says, I forgot to say, good evening, Tom. How are you doing? Doing good, thank you. Hope you are too. If Seth keeps wrestling despite injury, he might find himself in a similar situation that Asuka found herself, on the shelf for an extended time. I suspect he will wrestle, and just purely to lose a championship. And he wants to put over someone on the way out. He wants to lose it to Bron Breakker. Joey says, does WWE still want to use Brock despite his sloppy match with Cena? Yeah. Joey says, is Evolve done after most of their roster was fired? No, they're just going to use more NXT talent. Trekkipedia says they're going to have Jacob Fatu get written off tonight. We will find out. As I said, I believe it was strategic to make SmackDown shorter to keep Raw on top. I mean, Raw was 2 hours this week, so I wouldn't go that far. Yes, Ashley, I was just discussing that. They're back a couple of minutes and you'll find it. Sean says, when speaking to In The Click podcast, Alexa said she was talking too creative and was given a list of people in a bubble who needed storylines. And she said, what about Charlotte? And they have history. I reported that previously. Alexa did request to work with Charlotte. King Azza, I don't know, because the match at WrestleMania was supposed to be Seth versus Roman, and Seth is no longer going to be there. Juan, thank you, says SRS the Enemy. Confirmed your report that yes, Bayley leaving for AEW is a possibility. He also said Britt Baker might be leaving. Thoughts? People have been talking about Britt Baker leaving and having left for months now. I'll believe it when it happens. VTP, we will be talking War Games in just a moment as well. Hello again, Tribal. Noob says, hello, Mr. Colohue. How are you doing today? Seems like WWE is using AI while Triple H is off doing his political duties. He doesn't have political duties yet. Ray, we're not at that point yet. AJ Styles has plenty of people to work with. He's only just delivered his list. Joey says, Meltzer reported WWE is using AI. Again, a couple of minutes ago, guys. 2-3 minutes. Just zip it back. I've discussed all of that. Azza, Howdy didn't go to Australia because he wasn't available to travel. Hector says, with Santos Escobar back in the fold, do you see WWE running back the idea, having him in AAA and challenging for the mega title? Yes. Will says, do you think Dakota Kai will show up at AEW's pay-per-view tomorrow? She has been invited. Joey says, do you expect the Vision to keep adding members, or will the focus be on Braun now? I don't know if there will be a Vision without Seth Rollins. They're going to find out if Braun can talk. But they do still have Paul Heyman. So it doesn't automatically have to be all on him. Trekkipedia, the decision will be made behind the scenes, not in the open on Raw. As I said, this Grayson Waller isn't working. He seems to just be a social media guy. The entire New Day thing isn't working, to be honest with you. Ray says, please put Charlotte in the singles division. If you want her booed, that is how it's going to happen. Erin, at this point, there is still no update on a return for Ilya Dragunov. Trekkipedia is asking for 40 likes. We have 79 people here and 36 likes. 4 more gets us to 40. Have a double check, if you please. Declan says, what's next for Tiffany? Hopefully some new opponents. She desperately needs them. Desperately. Big up, Mashup Dad. Joey says, do you think WWE will still have writers of AI taking over? Yes. AI is not coming for anyone's jobs. Okay, so let's see. Tribal is saying Bloodline. Ashley is suggesting Lashley and Lana. BTP is saying Bloodline. Declan is saying Bloodline. Eric is saying Punk and Drew. Punk and Drew, to be clear, was mostly Punk and Drew. Hector says, wasn't it the Lashley storyline? Shrekipedia is saying ChatGPT, Lana and Lashley. One says Lashley and Lana. Ishi says, hello Tom, hope you're okay. For those that don't know, Lashley and Lana was 6 years ago. Because it was in November 2019 that I was in Manchester watching Lashley and Lana and making very crude jokes to the people around me. Mashup Tads, they have 25 writers and they can't write by themselves. Ryan says Rhodes and Reigns. Millennial Noob says it was Bobby Lashley on being involved in Japanese culture. A lot of chat rate. Appreciate you guys. A lot of chat rate. Ray says, did you watch Hardy Boys vs Team 3D? I did not, gotta be honest. Right. So a lot of you got it right. It was the Bloodline. Several of the individual beats for the Bloodline were written by ChatGPT because essentially the prompts that were used broke it down into no more than a minor change every week. There's a couple of things that they did rush. Guys, by the way, asking you that question and having so many of you answer and drop chat rate boosted up to 83 viewers. Thank you very kindly. The beats were so slow and calm that in fact most of what was going on with Sami Zayn was ChatGPT. Do you remember when Sami Zayn turned on Roman Reigns in the main event of the Royal Rumble after a match between he and Kevin Owens? ChatGPT decided that that was the right time. Guys, can I ask you a question? Of the last 5 years, is the Bloodline storyline for you one of the best storylines of that time? Because for me, it absolutely was. Ishii, going to need a source on that? Because at this point in time, Raw is still Raw. Everton says, when do I see Uncle Howdy back? As soon as he's fit and firing and ready. Fiend, thank you for sourcing, says according to PWInsider, Drew McIntyre will face Cody Rhodes tonight instead of Jacob Fatu. Hector says, as long as the title is featured on TV and PLEs, that's what matters to me. As much as I like Roman is going to be less active than when he was champ, so I wouldn't expect to see the title much. Not as of yet, Mashup. We are getting to that, I promise. King Elder says, if Roman goes after the World Heavyweight Championship, it would make him a hypocrite after him calling it the loser bracket title. Yeah. Funny that, isn't it? Sean, I did intend to have a watch party for Crown Jewel. And then, as it turned out, sites like Metro, Wrestling Inc. and the like had steered me wrong and had given me the wrong UK time for it to start. I had prior appointments at 3 o'clock. I believed it was starting at 11, at which point I would have watched it and had a watch party. Instead, it started at 1. I couldn't risk it. I simply couldn't risk it, unfortunately. So I did not end up having that show. One says, imagine Triple H running for president if he almost has political duties. No, his job essentially, and what they're looking towards, is to essentially sit in the White House and argue in wrestling's favour. He would be something of a champion of business, and he would ensure that WWE makes a hell of a lot of money. Because there's no conflict of interest there. Fiend says, how do you think WWE should book New Day? The heel turn was fine, even though it was a bit rushed. What I think they're missing with New Day is motivation, impetus, decent opponents. And I think that's the big thing for me. I'd be booking them against Motor City Machine Guns and I'd be booking them to have 15, 20-minute matches, and that would be all. I would just leave them to do everything they could with that, because they could do a lot with that. Santos is not a bad shout, Rickham. As I says, what's going on with Bayley? She seems happier. I mean, that's the story that she's got. Yes. Okay, so the question was the Bloodline one of the best stories of the past 5 years? Ashley says yes. Rickham says yes. Azza says yeah, it was. Tribal says yes. Declan says yes. Bear with. Pardon me. Ishii says it was pure cinema. No Name says, yo Tom, hope the family are well. They are, thank you. They're off at a concert today. Won't be talking about it in any more detail, but they're having a great time. Also, watch that damn pig. Hector says, I know we don't like talking about it, but TMZ reports that Vince McMahon essentially got a slap on the wrist for his reckless driving incident. Yeah, he signed up to a reckless driving program, and that means he keeps his license. Bailey says it was a great story, but has run its course. Juan says Bloodline is the only thing that kept WWE's ratings up, to be honest. For those that don't know, my dream as a child, since I was 6 years old, was to be a professional writer. I've written a series of fantasy novels. I've not completed them as of yet. And for the first time, using sites like ChatGPT, I was able to create concept art for one of my characters. AI is not the enemy. In fact, AI has been something I've used extensively when writing up my notes. It's genuinely quite effective. It saved me a lot of time, and if anything, when you consider how much more news I've been able to bring to you guys in the last few days, in the last few weeks, it's because I'm not spending so much time scripting anymore. That's where we are. Sean says, is it possible some talents like Wesley and Tony D'Angelo, who are in NXT for 5 years, aren't ready to come up? It's always possible. Rick says it was one of the best stories in wrestling history. Ryan says, all in all, yes. Had some weird moments, but when it was going well, the Bloodline storyline was phenomenal. Oh, thank you, Liam. JD's Aviation Adventures said the Bloodline was the best storyline, and as of right now, there's nothing really happening, personally. I appreciate how you phrased that. Sean says Mercedes is now the longest reigning TBS champion. Fans think this is AEW trying to erase Jade Cargill. To be clear, Sean, before Mercedes Money signed for AEW, I reported that AEW were planning to make her the longest reigning TBS champion. I wouldn't go that far, Bailey. Marcel also says yes. Oh, gotcha, Trekipedia. Ooh, yes. Thank you, Eric. Could you remind me of the question? What happens is because the chat is so large now, it tends to delete what's going on earlier, so I can keep track of it. So if you could please remind me. Pardon me. I'd like to answer that question, so please do drop it once again. Hey, Ed, good to see you, mate. Matchup Dad says Tom's going to combine wrestling and fantasy, the Squared Circle of Power trilogy. I mean, fantasy novel. Swords and shit. Eric is talking about that. Declan says, who do we see winning the Royal Rumble 2026? Men's and women's. You know, we're asking about it, so let's talk about it. Let's use our available resources. ChatGPT. Who are the current favourites to win the 2026 Royal Rumble? It is currently searching the web. Jesus Christ, this is terrible. You know what it says the top contender is? Cody Rhodes, the current WWE champion. This is outdated as hell. It's pulling from PW Mania, that's why. That's why. Ugh. Leading pick for the women, Rhea Ripley, then Becky Lynch, then Bayley. Bayley. AI, I tell you. Anyway, nearly got it. Ed says AI is a difficult beast because yes, it's a massive time saver. However, it will eventually take over for people's jobs. That'll be very bad, so it's a wait and see. Juan says imagine Bayley, Mercedes, AEW Women's Tag Team Champions. Eric says, if you were booking Liv Morgan's return, how would you do it? Personally, I would 100% have Liv Morgan return at the Royal Rumble. I'd have her essentially declare war on the Judgment Day. I'd have her beat the ever-living shit out of Dominic Mysterio. And at WrestleMania, I'd have her beat up Roxanne Perez. After that, I'd then have her going back into the contention for the top championship, but I would have her moving over to SmackDown, having vanquished the Judgment Day, to take on Tiffany Stratton. And for me, personally, I'd have Liv Morgan dethroning Tiffany Stratton. Thank you for asking that question. I appreciate it. It was nice. Felt good. Cylons. Interesting, Declan. Sean says, do you think AJ Lee will be on Raw this week since Becky's defending the women's IC title? Personally, I believe so, yes. The other Mike says, how is Bianca's recovery coming along? Do you think they just wait till the Royal Rumble for her to return? Yeah. I think Bianca Belair is a genuine contender to win the Rumble. I think Bianca Belair versus Tiffany Stratton makes a lot of sense. Ryan says, if AI is used to help people and not used to take people's jobs, and it's a good thing as it can help people, I'm concerned it'll eventually be something to phase people out. Here's the thing. People are angry at AI for taking their jobs, just like people are angry at immigrants for taking their jobs, just like people are angry at women for taking their jobs. Some people are just real angry, and they're the really loud ones. Personally, I use AI a lot in my daily working life. It hasn't taken my job. It has made it easier. I still get paid the same. That's my experience of it. I don't know if we're at the point yet where they're taking any jobs. And I'm not sure what jobs they would take. That's my question. What jobs are they taking? And that's what's confusing me. Guys, we have 89 people here, 46 likes, 4 more guesses to 50. If we can hit that, I'd be appreciative. Ashley says the creative on SmackDown is horrible. They need AI. Cal says, hello, mate. Hope you and the family as well are well. They are indeed, thank you. And welcome back, mate. Says, when do you expect we'll see Howdy? Relatively soon, but at the moment he's at home resting. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be touring as much as he did. I'm not going to go into any detail. I certainly don't have certain things confirmed. He's not in the best state mentally at the minute, to my knowledge. Ken says, hey, Tom, do you know if Trish still wants a match with Alexa? Do you think it will happen? Yes and yes. Ray says, who would you like to see win the WWE Heavyweight title who has never won it? I think there's a lot of talent there who are ready to make that step. I'm looking at you, Jacob Fatu's. I'm looking, more honestly, at your Dominic Mysterios. There is a potential match in the offing between Cody Rhodes and Dominic Mysterio at WrestleMania. Not often I get Tommy. You alright, Rebel? Marcel says, Liv and Jacob Fatu are my picks for the Rumble. Eric says, could you see Blake Monroe getting called up soon? I think anyone who gets called up soon is going to be lost in the ether. No, Joey, nothing on any pushing out. Hector says, Tom, what's your thoughts on the internet crapping on WWE over the Ridge Holland situation? The internet craps over WWE on basically everything. They are paying for Ridge Holland's rehab. They were intending to release him beforehand, but ultimately they had no plans for him. It's a bit shithousery, but I mean, WWE are the kings of shithousing, let's be honest. JDS says, could Liv Morgan return at the Royal Rumble? Yes. Ryan, I'm not sure what miscommunication we've had there. I'm not upset by anything you've said. Just to be clear, not upset by anything you've said, and I'm not sure where our miscommunication might have been. But yeah, you're all good, man. Michael says, hi, Tom. Welcome, Michael. Eric says, why does it seem like just Dexter and Gacy the only members of the White Six who wrestle right now? Because they are. Cal says, Cena versus Dom looks to be the match at Survivor Series. This is, of course, according to Wrestling Observer, but it also looks like Gunter will be the last match. Does Gunter get his belt back? That, for me, is the only question mark over it. I don't necessarily see it. Cal says, I hope Bo is okay. People forget he's gone through a lot with Bray's passing and his family's health issues. Guys, I'm going to dive into my second piece of news. A quick one, this one. WWE are now revisiting War Games plans because they now no longer have the leader of the division, Seth Rollins, or Jacob Fatu, who was expected to be part of the Roman Reigns team. Now, they could just knock the numbers down. That is something they are considering. But also, Seth Rollins really really, really did not want to be in part of a team with Brock Lesnar. Becky Lynch really, really wanted to avoid any moment in which she might stand alongside Brock Lesnar. So War Games, not going the way they wanted it to. The Wyatt 6 versus the MFT is back in contention to take place at War Games in War Games. Also, one of the reasons they're considering this is that most of the names have already been leaked, and apparently WWE are particularly annoyed that the name Austin Theory leaked when it did, because they were intending to have that as a late in the day surprise. Andrade. We are talking non-competes. To my knowledge, based on my understanding of US law, which, to be clear, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not part of the United States. But based on lawyers I have spoken to try and better understand WWE contracts, the non-compete clause in WWE contracts has never been legally enforceable. Non-compete clauses only are effective for employees. WWE don't have wrestlers as employees. They have them as indentured servants. So that's where we are at this point. Andrade is simply the first person to be brave enough to actually try, to actually risk it, and to actually call the WWE bluff. The WWE have immediately sent AEW a cease and desist, so even though Andrade's legal advice is, in my opinion, correct, AEW have told him, we are not taking that risk. AEW are not willing to side with Andrade in this moment. Also, fun little tidbit, part of the legal advice that Andrade is getting is being funded by Ric Flair. Apparently they are still very close. WWE are reportedly considering bringing in year-long non-compete clauses, which again, based on the fact that these are not employees, they are not, to my knowledge, legally enforceable. But if Triple H is standing beside Donald Trump in the White House, it doesn't really matter what's legally enforceable, does it? Doesn't really matter what's legally enforceable. That's the world we live in now. What a world it is. Eric's two picks to win the Rumble are Roman Reigns and Io Sky. Hell no, Ray, hell no. But what I will say, since I stopped doing the shorts and stopped posting already existing content, my overall subscriber count has been slowly and steadily going down, as people who joined for shorts left again. I'm okay with that, they're not going to watch the content I make anyway. But as it's gone down, it has now got to a point, when I launched the podcast on Monday, that number started to turn around again. We'll talk more about the podcast shortly, but all I will say is that, yeah, it's had a good impact already. Bailey says NXT has a fundamental problem that some characters will just sink on the main roster. Tony D'Angelo, Chase U, Hank and Tank, etc. This is the main reason that NXT 2.0 is a thing. The relaunch of Bron Breakker to essentially create a character that would work on the main roster. And here we are. And people hated it. And it worked. Stevenson says never get her on time. Almost as if the wife intentionally times it. Just starting about to rewind back to the start. That's absolutely fine. You need to rewind, you go right ahead. You're still here, it still shows you as a viewer, and you still get the news. Everybody wins. Libations for everybody. Cal says Dexter and Joe keep them all on TV. Pretty much at the minute, yeah. Ashley says Julia should be the one to dethrone Tiffany Stratton. Not right now. Not right now. Hector says, do you have any idea if WWE has any plans to feature Jade Cargill more? Seems like they'll heat her up for a title match, then she'll be gone for months. Julia could use some opponents too. You are absolutely right. And Julia versus Jade Cargill was discussed before Jade Cargill had her face cut open. So yeah, there's also talk of Julia versus Nia Jax. Jade Cargill's going to take a bit of time off. It's for everyone's benefit. Everton says if MFT versus the Wyatts are planned for War Games, the Wyatts will need a 5th member. Who do you think will join them? I have an outside feeling it might be Cody. Genuinely do. You never know. You never know. Cal says, per Dave Meltzer, I know it's Dave Meltzer, but he said, most backstage talent were unhappy with Lesnar's return. Many backstage felt his promo stints have been cringy and off-putting. That was Dave Meltzer confirming what I've already reported, Cal. So yeah, he's right. A lot of people are not happy that Brock Lesnar's back. Not happy at all. Michael says, I don't see how WWE can prevent someone from making a living for a year without pay. As I say, it's not legally enforceable to my knowledge, so they can't. And yet somehow they do. Fear. Ryan says, how can they tell someone you cannot work anywhere in the US in your craft for 1 whole year and you aren't getting paid is absolutely ridiculous. It's disgusting. I agree. WWE and shithousery go hand in hand. JDS says War Games will be Roman, Jay, Jimmy or LA Knight versus Braun, Bronson, Austin Theory. That is JDS's gut feeling. 3-on-3 is a choice. Declan, I doubt the women's main event at Survivor Series this year. Eric has given 2 picks for each Royal Rumble and is going crazy about it. Liam says there are reportedly big plans expected for Lyra Valkyria heading into 2026 via Body Slam. This is one of those wonderful reports where they pick someone who's getting a lot of attention and say, yeah, big stuff might be coming. Might be coming. There are reportedly big plans expected. That's heading into 2026, right? Which means now and then for an entire year. So if in the next year she competes for a championship, well done, Body Slam. Ryan says, my 2 picks for the Rumble are Braun and Liv. Liam, I do not recognise that source. Oh, right. No, I get what you're going for. No, I like that. Bailey says, at what point does WWE have to give up on Jade Cargill? Never. They never have to give up on anyone. They will, but they never have to. Juan says, if Dakota Kai goes to AEW, who's most likely the first opponent? I'm leaning towards Mercedes. I'm leaning towards Chris Statlander. Fiend says, what does CM Punk think of Brock Lesnar being back? Paul Heyman keeps suggesting that everything's fine between Punk and Lesnar. Paul Heyman is wrong. Bailey says, the argument being made for the non-compete is that Andrade voluntarily signed it and that's what gives it weight. Yeah. That is, you're absolutely right, Bailey. That is the argument that could be used against him. However, if something is legally unenforceable when you sign it, it remains legally enforceable after you sign it. I do think it's a very good thing to point out, though, guys. Never sign anything unless you 100% agree with all of it. I've had contracts rewritten from employers because I'm a pernickety little bitch. Also, I have OCD. So you're going to do it right or I'm not going to do it. My first proper contract of employment, I didn't sign for a year. They were paying me for a year without my contract actually being signed, which was funny. Matchup says, I guess WWE expects that with their pal running the executive, they don't have to worry about the FTC. Eric says, any reason why Lyra is doing both Raw and NXT? Because they felt they had an interesting storyline at NXT that could develop someone and bring them up. So she's helping the transition. Oh, Hector, good question, but unfortunately I don't have an answer for you. As regards to the former Dana Brooke, now Ash by Elegance, all I know is that she has had to retire. Ooh, Cal suggests Aleister Black helping the Wyatts. Mashup says, quite rightly, European countries have loads of laws that prevent you signing or giving force to abusive contracts. UK the same. Thank you for that differentiation. It hurts me that that differentiation has to be made, but Brexit was voted for, so yeah. Boo. Liam says, San Jose, it's tonight, NorCal. This is what Fatu just posted, but is now saying is not on the show. And Drew vs. Cody is happening. What's going on? Jacob Fatu and PWInsider are 2 different sources, is what's happening. JDS said, I'll always wonder who would The Rock likely wrestle next, Roman or Cody, or maybe someone else. Cody's the person he's been angling for. Hey KJ, good to see you, mate. KJ says, I thought because Andrade was fired with cause instead of the pointless releases is why he's not being paid. WWE will want to have their cake and eat it too. Noob says, I believe that MFT and Wyatt will be the men's War Games match, but the women's War Games, it'll be Kabuki Warriors, Julia and Roxanne and Raquel versus Rio, Stephanie Vaca and Bailey and Lyra. Joey says, is there going to be a new House of Black with the Zelina pairing? It's being considered, but I don't feel they'll go that far. Next up. Dave Meltzer is reporting that AJ Styles won't just retire, WWE will do something for his retirement. This is the premier wrestling journalist in the world. This is supposedly the best wrestling journalist in the world. AJ Styles announced his retirement. Hey, WWE, they're going to do something. And everyone posts this shit. Everyone posts this shit. He's not going to stop if he keeps getting paid. I also find it hilarious when Wrestling Observer Live talks about, well, I saw this on the Observer and I'm not sure how real it is. It's your fucking site. Anyway. Hector says, what was the reasoning for having Zelina finally line with her in real life husband Alistair? Did they actually have a long-term plan for them, or was it a one-off? They don't have a long-term plan. It's not a one-off. They realised that they weren't doing anything good with Alistair Black and they weren't doing anything good with Zelina Vega, so they paired them up in the hope that they would do something good together. Yeah, not great that, is it? Really not. Fiend says, who do you personally expect to be the new World Heavyweight Champion? Bron Breakker, personally. Fiend says, Dave Meltzer knows absolutely nothing. It's hilarious seeing his lousy posts. Carl says, the wrestler is going to wrestle, but one wrestler after he stops wrestling. What kind of news is that? Typical Dave Meltzer. Welcome to Becky Lynch channel. Thank you for giving your predictions there as well. Ryan says, I would be surprised if they didn't do something with AJ in his retirement year. Liam says, AJ and Jericho's retirement tour next year. Haven't they seen what they did to Cena's retirement tour? Fiend says, hey Tom, got an exclusive piece of news for you. John Cena is expected to wrestle in one or more of his last 4 appearances. Bailey says, how is Dave Meltzer the best wrestling journalist? He's just the oldest. And thank you for the compliment there, Bailey. JDS, I don't have news at the moment on Chris Jericho. I will be discussing it on speculation terms during the podcast, which will come out on Monday. Before I get back to the news, I want to quickly talk about what we will be discussing on Monday. So this Monday, just gone, was our first proper attempt at a podcast. It premiered on our usual spoiler warning slot, and we did have about 50 people watching it. Thank you to all 50 of those people who came in, hung out, spoke to each other, and helped launch that show successfully. We're now at about 462 views. We've had 92 hours of watch time on that. So it has been watched for 92 hours and it is still getting regular views. So it's still being put out there, it's still being watched, it's still being enjoyed. The whole concept of the podcast already paying dividends. Our watch time, considering it was 36 minutes long, we averaged a 33.6% watch time. So your average viewer watched for 12 minutes. That means that of those 462 people, I can check here, 27%, so just over a quarter, watched it start to finish, the entire thing. Thank you to everyone who did that. And there were others who didn't quite make it that far. 55% of people watched less than 40 seconds. So I need to work on my intros. But that does mean we saw some new viewers. It does mean new people found it. It does mean that we are growing all over again. So that is some very good news. I'm going to be talking about a few different things going forwards. One of those things, and this should hopefully interest some people, I'm planning to bring back the Wrestling Receipt. Wrestling Receipt faded because it was a monthly show. I needed a month of content to essentially fill a 15-20 minute video, and I'm trying at the moment to make longer videos, like the podcast. So the Wrestling Receipt is returning as a weekly segment during the Spoiler Warning Monday podcast. So we will be running down everything from the last few weeks and saying what people have got wrong and, of course, what people have got right. But there's always so much stuff worth checking out in the Wrestling Receipt. We're also going to be speculating on the Chris Jericho return that's being reported. I'm going to be sharing what I know, which at the moment, I will admit, is not that much. But we're also going to be talking about what we expect Chris Jericho's legacy and what a Chris Jericho retirement tour would look like. And one of our other topics will be about AI, ChatGPT, the Bloodline storyline, and will Roman's reign ever be beaten in the modern day WWE? So we'll be discussing all of that in Monday's podcast. Please do check it out. I do hope you enjoy it. And I would love to canvass for opinions now and ask if you guys have opinions you'd like to share, positive or negative. Constructive criticism is always welcome, and in fact has really helped this channel over the years. People coming in and saying, I like it when you do this, I don't like it when you do this. That's been really helpful. So as I get to my next piece of news, please, if you have any feedback, drop it in the chat right now, and let's talk about it. Randy Orton has requested that the WWE pair him up for a feud with Joe Hendry in NXT. Joe Hendry versus Randy Orton in NXT. However, the WWE promised him I Show Speed instead. Randy Orton is essentially a little bit bored at the minute. He's looking for something new, something different. And for many, many months now, he's been waiting for the opportunity to wrestle someone in NXT. That moment, as such, has not yet come. But he's hoping that Joe Hendry will be the guy to relight that fire. He believes in Joe Hendry. I know I was off. You're going to have to live with it. Jay White is expected to return to AEW very soon. He is fit, he is cleared, and he is ready to go. They're just waiting for the right moment to slot him in. They're waiting for a PLE to get a pop when he does return. He's a great wrestler. He's one of my personal favourites, so I'd imagine he will get that pop. The WWE are having a clear out of NXT at the moment. They're looking at people that they essentially don't believe are going... Pardon me? People that they don't necessarily believe are future World Heavyweight or WWE champions, and if they do not believe you have the ambition or drive to get there, they are going to kick you out. WWE are cutting costs right now. Next year, when they have Saudi money, it's gonna look like they're making billions. And they will be doing. The WWE also in discussions about taking Donald Trump to sit in the front row and to watch in Saudi Arabia. Yeah. So glad I don't watch. I'm going to catch up with the chat. I have one more piece of news after that, but I'm going to make sure to catch up first. Ray says, I hope Zelina Vega is just a manager, not going to wrestle anymore. She is going to be wrestling, yes. Noob says, I get the feeling we might get Black and Vega versus Damian Priest and his girlfriend Lola Vice. I honestly think Damian Priest is more likely to join them. Guy needs some direction. Rickan says, WWE needs to move on from this Alistair and Priest feud. It's boring. I agree. Hector says, this might be a hot take, but I'd like to see LA Knight win the title from Seth as a transitional champion before they give it to Braun. Let LA Knight get his brief moment, then strap the rocket to Braun. Oh, Ishii is saying via body slam, Ilya Dragunov is returning tonight. Interesting. We'll find out. Fiend says, can you discuss the situation with the theme songs? Seems some people are going back to previous theme songs that weren't made by Def Rebel, like Harry said in the Street Profits. Yeah, essentially what it comes down to is that Def Rebel has a limited license with the WWE to use his material, to use their material, I should say. And when that expires, Def Rebel is supposed to make a new one, but the WWE haven't been asking them to. Cal says, I hope Ilya returns today. I think he's a generational talent. By WrestleVotes, Fiend says several talent have been requesting theme song changes for some time, names including those outspoken like Sheamus and Drew McIntyre. Cal says if Gunter did win the IC belt, would WWE see Gunter Ilya at Mania or Gunter Brock? WWE would see Gunter Ilya, Brock and Gunter would see Gunter Brock. Gunter is very happy to see Brock back. Brockback Mountain. Liam says Punk definitely winning the Chamber next year since it's in Chicago. Maybe a reason why he ain't winning the Rumble because it's in Saudi. I know he's going to be in the Chamber next year. I don't necessarily think he's going to win it. Jan says, do you see AJ Lee versus Becky Lynch for the Intercontinental title at Saturday Night Main Event? That or Survivor Series? Yeah, I think it'll be one of those. Keith Sean suggests that Obafemi is going to debut and take the title off Sammy. Ryan says, I really enjoyed the podcast style on Monday. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for the feedback, Liam. Thank you. I'm going to do a sneeze and I do apologise. My burps are louder than my sneezes and I'm just so very sorry for my weird body. Ryan says, I definitely liked the wrestling receipt going into the podcast style. Glad to hear it. I know people really enjoyed the wrestling receipt and it's back on Monday. This Monday is coming back. Hector says, shoot run the AJ Jericho Mania match back for AJ's retirement tour so we can get his win back. Bailey, when you say a backdrop with images, do you mean like overlay images over everything? Edit images in? Or do you mean like behind me? Because I'm getting new floorboards in the office this weekend. I'm getting a new door frame put in. And I'm getting some of the plaster filled in with a bonding coat. I don't know what these things mean, but I'm getting them done. And then once that's done, I can start looking at painting. So I can start painting the ceiling. I can start painting the walls. I've got a lovely shade of red. You guys won't really be able to see it. There's no chance you guys will be able to see it. Oh, you actually do. It's a lovely shade of red. Okay? It's a lovely shade of red that I hope you guys enjoy because that's going to be everywhere. Now that is going to sort of reflect a bit of light. So I'm going to need to sit a bit more of an angle to reflect the light that way instead of like this way. I need to share images from your PC. Interesting, Bailey. Is that a thing you can do with editing software? I've never encountered that, but that's a good shout. That could be interesting. Yeah, I might just need to paint this bit green. That was hollow. That. There is a fireplace in there. They've just bricked it up. Do I want a fireplace? Not really. Not really. Sorry guys, I got distracted. It's a good suggestion, Bailey. I will look into it. I appreciate the clarification. Ray says, the last time I went to a Raw show in the UK, Big Show was wrestling. Well, Ryan says, Randy Orton needs to relight his fire and Joe Hendry is his only desire. Surely, Cal. Otherwise they're wasting it. No, Mashup. He would get the, here's Donald Trump. Everyone clap. Turn down the everyone turn down the fucking volume. Everyone clap. Look, everyone loves this guy. Turn it off. Turn it off. That's what would actually happen. It's like a toddler after a pint of sugar. That's brilliant. Michael says, King Switch ready for his return. Anyway, Ray says, what's the worst storyline of 2025? Let's ask ChatGPT. Let's do it. Let's do it. Because it can check Twitter. And it did terribly. What was the worst WWE storyline of 2025? It'll check Twitter. It'll check fan opinion. It'll probably mention something with Dominic Mysterio. There isn't universal agreement. Well, that's that. It's not done badly there. It's not done badly at all. So it's given us 4 options. Number 4 was Ludwig Kaiser's turn as El Grande Americano. Now, first and foremost, it's obviously got it wrong because that is a straight up lie. Ludwig fucking ridiculous. So obviously that one's wrong. We forget that. Third, the Bloodline storyline as it's dragged on. There's criticism the angle has been overstretched. Some critics, including former backstage writers, Russo, feel that adding more members, spinning side plots, and prolonged drama has weakened its impact. That's a fair criticism. That's a fair criticism. Number 2, carrying Cross's push/booking. Cross got a lot of momentum early and fans were excited about his potential. Many think WWE squandered that momentum. So what is it for you guys? For you guys, raise question. What was the worst storyline in 2025? It's not any of the ones I've mentioned, but I do agree with the AI. Give me your opinions. Ray says, I'm on TNA side when it comes to TNA versus NXT. Ray says, how's the house coming along? Slowly. I've had to... Kids are expensive. Kids are especially expensive when they have deadbeat dads. Kids are especially expensive when you want them to have everything that you didn't have as a kid. That's the most expensive part. I want to be a good dad. I got called dad a couple of days ago. First time. Pretty big moment for me. I don't know, it just kind of felt like 37 years of waiting. All hitting me at once. I'm getting emotional now. I have always wanted kids. It doesn't really matter to me that they're not my sperm. That's not important. They sound like me. They make decisions like me. They're mine. Anyway, Eric says, how far along are you in office in terms of renovations? Well, 2 days ago, I was looking at carpets. Yeah. So literally, at this point, I still need to do some repairs. I'm getting now to the expensive bits. So I do need to repair some floorboards because I've got some dodgy ones there. I do need to fix up the door frame because the wood is just knackered. I probably do need a new door at some point. The door's not bad. It's just loose. It was not well put in at all. So I do eventually need a new door. For now, though, the next step, once that is done, which is happening this weekend, all that's left after that is paint the ceiling, paint the walls. I'm probably going to put lining paper in. Just because, you know, paint the lining paper and then put a carpet down. I've got ideas for this bit. Ideas. I'm probably just going to get some sort of bookcase and then I'll tilt it. Because at the minute you've got like deodorant and stuff over there. It's not very appealing physically. Like it's not good. There's glasses wipes over there because I'm a messy bastard. But if I have like this stand where I've currently got my TV, if I, instead of having that TV, I have the TV over there, and I move this in there, and then I can put some bookcase on top of it, and then I no longer hear next door, which is a concern sometimes when they're playing music and I'm recording, because that can get me shut down and demonetized. Bookcases, I can then put like wrestling figures and cards, and I can put Heracles up. Heracles. And then make something of this alcove. The other alcove will be somewhat similar, but I'm actually going to put like a day bed or a couch over there, so that I can chill in here as well. But if I could afford things, I'd already be done. I'm nearly done. See, I agree, Declan. The fireplace would be great if not for the fact that this is where I stream. And I just don't feel it quite works. It would not kill off the noise the way I'm hoping for. Everything's a bit echoey. So yeah, nearly. Juan says the Vincent Trump storyline from 2007 was terrible. I agree. Ryan says a fair criticism of the Bloodline storyline. Bailey thinks the worst storyline of 2025 was heel Cena. Ryan says Brock Cena. Liam says heel Cena. Tribal says heel Cena. Mashup says heel Cena. Juan says heel Cena. ChatGPT says heel Cena. I can't argue with that. What I can debate is that their source is blog.anyfans.com. It's not the strongest source I've ever had. What I need to do ideally is get myself a website, post a load of stuff, and just feed it into the AI constantly. Then I'm sure I'll find lots of people. Maybe that's what I do. Maybe I just need to keep posting my own stuff in there. I digress. Anyway, Eric says, Asuka's current storyline because I feel WWE has fumbled Asuka's heel run already. Declan says you should be proud of yourself. You're doing a great job. Thank you. Hector says, worst storyline for me was the MJF Hurt Business storyline. Wasn't terrible, but very disappointing and didn't have a real satisfying finish. Okay, we're doing this now, are we? Ryan says, I'm really glad to hear that there, Tom. Anyone can be a dad. There's only certain people that can be a father. If you're one of them, and you are one of them as you look after your kids. I try. You will all know, of course, I use code names for them. I don't want their names to be public knowledge. I don't want to put the word out there and make them targets because, as you know, nobody who spends time on the internet is popular. No one. Everyone's got haters, so I don't want them to become targets. But I do hope one day to be able to finish a show and divert you guys towards a YouTube channel or a TikTok channel or something that will help them, you know? Mashup. I don't actually need to transcribe anything anymore. YouTube actually does it for me. So that is a very good comment. I can literally just take everything that I've scripted, just grab the quote and put it on a website. It's actually a very fair point. I just don't have the time. I just don't have the time. Anyway. Matchup Dad says, mine turning 18. One of my fondest memories is him at age 9 heckling Big Show and getting into a proper argument with him. Nice. The other Mike, no one, Adam Cole. He's seeing what his future holds. C-Mac says, good evening, Tom. Good to see you. And good to see you too, C-Mac. Liam says, you're a good father, Tom. What a moment for you. It was an emotional moment. Yeah. Anyway, last piece of news before I get too emotional is as regards the Hardys and the Iconics. I've been told by representatives in WWE and in TNA that both the Hardys and the Iconics had a similar strategy to run down their TNA contracts in the hope of WWE interest. The only team which I know had WWE interest was the Iconics, though I don't think it's impossible that the Hardys are in some way involved. I don't suspect for a moment that they would be wrestling as a tag team in the WWE going forwards. Ray's looking forward to AEW Wrestle Dream tomorrow night, and I am looking forward to recording a podcast for all of you guys on Monday that I hope you will check out. The Wrestling Receipt returns. Keep an eye out on Sunday on the community page where I'll be asking for your thoughts and opinions to read out during the recording as well. I would love to hear your thoughts, and please do remember that if you can, and if you're a regular here, pop into the community page because I do advertise the show beforehand. The more engagements we get in there, the more people comment, the more people talk, the more we get the quizzes back involved that I know people really enjoyed. The more we get of those, the more likely we are to continue growing as a community page as well. So we have peaked today at a wonderful 92 viewers, 62 likes. That's been a great show. T-Bone, I discussed that about an hour ago. By all means, zip back. It is all there, I promise you. So, I'm going to wrap up now. Hit the add button, and hopefully you guys have a great night. I've been Tom Colohue. You have been fantastic, and I will say thank you very much for coming. Well, it's the big show.